Welcome back to 6 on Guitars Leafy Lessons video series. We're going to cover how to make a bridge in this video. What I'm going to try to do is use as few power tools as possible. Normally I shape everything in the bandsaw and I bring it over to the belt sander and I go ahead and shape the rest of it there. You're still going to have to use a power drill to drill the holes for the bridge pins and for the strings, but other than that, I'm going to try to get it down to where I'm not doing everything on the belt sander as far as shaping goes and try to show you a little different way of doing that. The first thing that I did when I decided that I was going to make a whole bunch of bridges was I bought a piece of rosewood. Now, these are all the blanks, but the rosewood itself was a piece that was probably about 5 inches wide, maybe, right around there. 5 inches wide and probably 3 feet long, something like that. And I cut my bridges out so that they're 1.5 inches wide and about 6 or 7 inches long. Those are my blanks. And what you can do with a really, really big piece like that is you can rip it into strips that are about as wide as your bridge. So you rip it into, from a big board like this, you rip it into 1.5 inch wide strips. Then you stand them up, run them through the table saw right down the middle, and they'll fold open, and you'll have 2 blanks out of it. So on a piece that's 36 or say 40 inches long, you're going to get 3 feet, you get 2 bridges a foot, so you're going to get 6 bridges long, and you're going to get 3 bridges wide on a piece that's 5. So your 6 times 3 is 18, you're going to get 18 bridges out of a piece of rosewood that'll cost you about 30 bucks. So if you were to go buy the bridges pre-made, they're about 10 or 15 bucks a crack. For basically 1.5 bridges, you'll have the materials to make 18 of them. So we'll take you over to the bench and I'll show you the kind of start on this and my kind of process, and you can use that or adapt it and hopefully make a nice acoustic guitar bridge for yourself. Now the first step to making a bridge, and this is the way that I do it in my process, is I route the saddle location. All I do is measure down the middle and I measure how wide I want it to be and I route this. Now I've got a jig for this and I've explained it in another video how to do this, so I'm not going to go through all of that again. But basically what it winds up doing is it sits your Dremel tool on top and you just buzz right across and you do it. You can do the same thing with a router and a bushing. Just something that will control the router so it goes exactly where you want, or control the Dremel so it goes exactly where you want. And I went ahead and I route this offset. The distance for the offset can be found all over the internet. There's tons of measurements on there for that, so you can adjust back a little bit for your intonation. But the next step on this is to start drawing out some measurements. Now what I'll do after I have the slot done, of course, and the reason I do the slot again first is because this is the hardest part to get right. So once you get that right, you know you're good, you can move on to the next steps. You don't want to take, at least I don't want to take a completed bridge that's just missing a slot, mess the slot up, and then you got to start all over again. So I take my piece, and just for this example, I'm just going to do some just kind of quick drawing on here. And I get to the end of here, so I want to have a little bit more than the width. It's going to be where I start to kind of go down on my wings. So I'll do that for both of them, just a little bit more than the width of the saddle itself, the saddle slot. And so I've got my 2 spots there where I'm going to kind of come down. And then I've got my center line here still from last time. What I did was I made this, and again this is on an article on the website 6gunguitars.com. I don't think I've done a video on this yet, I may have, but anyway, you take a regular piece of wood and you mark out your 2¼ inch string spread, which is the case on this one. Measure it equidistantly between for all the holes and punch the holes out with a drill or a drill press. The nice thing about this is every time I clamp this onto here in the right position, the holes are always going to be spaced well. So you never ever really have to worry about getting the holes right again as far as the spacing goes. You clamp this on, you drill it, it's right every time. Templates really save a lot of time. It took me about as long as it takes to make a normal bridge to make just this template, which is fine because I've made 20 bridges since then using this and it's super, super easy. So what I do in this case is I line up my center line, and I've got a center line marked on here. I line it up so everything's nice and even. And I like to do my string spread, I like to do my bridge pins fairly close to the saddle itself, which helps with the angle that they're going to ramp up at. So I like to get that pretty close. I'll go ahead and put this on, and then find those marks through the hole, find my center line, and then just come back with a bar clamp or 2, and clamp that down. Actually, I'll clamp it on this side so you can see the drilling, which probably isn't too exciting, but at least you can still see it. So clamp that down really, really good with a 3/16 of an inch bit, which is the bore requirement for my taper that I've got. Some tapers may be different, but mine requires a 3/16 to start. I just come right up on top. And actually, you know what? I always do put another clamp over here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, just because this takes one extra step and everything will be right, and I won't have to worry about holding anything. So just come on with my holes and drill all 6 of them here. And again, I'm kind of doing this really quick, just for the video's sake. I have a habit of making 10 and 14-minute videos. So, got my holes drilled. I'm excited. I like the way they look. They're in a good spot. They're nice and even between the two of them. And if you do happen to mess up left and right, you can always add a little bit to one of the saddle holes, you know, to the end of the saddle slot, so you can kind of make it look like it's a little bit more even. That's kind of one of the little tricks. If you do mess one up, it's not the end of the world. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to mark locations for my wings. You know, normally I do measure these, but I'm going to kind of just get this on here with the markings just for now. There's a lot of measurements for this, for width for here. A lot of times it's 1 inch 7/8, sometimes 1 inch 1/8. I'm going to mark that out. Mark it out on this side too. And then normally what I would do is go to the bandsaw at this point and cut these off. You can do this with a regular handsaw, a coping saw, jigsaw, kind of anything like that, just to kind of get in and knock these guys down. So I'm going to go do that really quick, cut these guys off and come back. And I'm also too going to cut the majority of this up to my line. Here's my line. I'm also going to cut the majority of my ramp off. So that way when I come back with a scraper blade, I don't have a whole ton to remove here. So I put my ramp on there. I'll put my ramp on this side too. And I'm going to go over there with the saw and cut both of these off. I recommend cutting this first to get the bulk of the material out of the way, so that when you're cutting up through this, you have a lot less resistance as you're going through. So I'm going to cut off the backs, and I'm going to cut my ramp, and then come back and we'll start doing some shaping. Now that the preliminary shape has been cut off, I just cut off the backs on here, and I came in and cut an angle onto these guys. What I'm going to do now is clamp it down and come along with a file here that's rounded on the one side and flat on the other. You can use a rounded one, that's fine. And what you want to do is kind of come across here and you want to refine this slope a little bit. So do a little of that. You know, I've got a little bit of an indentation here, so that's going to take a little bit of time to work through. But you just go ahead and keep on going with that file. Keep on going with that file and you'll get through to as deep as you want, get most of the stuff roughed out. Come back, turn it around, do the same thing on the other side. Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit more of this. Just going to get this down and finished, but what I eventually want is a nice even slope from here to here, and this one's almost triangular, so I've got to dig out a bunch of this, so I want a nice even slope from there to there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that up with the rasp, and come back and show you that, and then we'll move on to the next step to profile the back.